She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She didn't threaten to leave. For years, everyone said she was patient, calm, a perfect wife. But silence is not peace. Silence is a countdown. This marriage did not end because of cheating or violence. It ended with one quiet sentence, spoken when it was already too late. Because when a woman stops explaining, she has already decided. Listen carefully. This story is not about divorce. It is about the warnings that were ignored. If you believe silence means happiness, stay till the end. And if this story touches your heart, subscribe now, because some lessons arrive only once and always too late. Chapter 1. The Marriage Everyone Envied. From the outside, Daniel and Sarah's marriage looked perfect. They were polite, respectable, calm. They attended family gatherings together. They smiled in photos. They never argued in public. People often said, "You are lucky, you never fight." Daniel believed that was true love. To him, silence meant peace. No shouting, no drama, no problems. Sarah smiled when people said those words, but her smile was learned, not natural. Inside their home, the days passed quietly, too quietly. Daniel worked long hours. He believed providing money was the same as providing love. When he came home tired, he wanted rest, not conversation. Sarah understood. At least, that is what she told herself. At first, she tried to talk. She shared small things: her day, her thoughts, her feelings. Daniel listened with half attention. Sometimes he nodded. Sometimes he checked his phone. When she noticed his distance, she stopped pushing. She thought patience would protect the marriage. She believed that if she stayed calm, things would improve. She believed love meant adjusting. Daniel noticed her quietness and felt proud. "My wife is mature," he told himself. "She understands me." He never asked why she stopped talking. Their home had no loud fights, but it also had no deep conversations. There were no late-night talks, no honest questions, no emotional closeness. Still, everyone admired them. Friends compared their own marriages to Daniel and Sarah's. "See how peaceful they are," people said. But peace without connection is not peace. It is distance wearing a calm face. Sarah felt something missing, but she couldn't name it yet. She only knew she felt unseen. At night, she lay awake beside Daniel, listening to his steady breathing, feeling completely alone. She told herself, "This is normal. All marriages become quiet." But silence was already growing between them, not as comfort, but as a warning. And no one noticed, not the friends, not the family, and not the man sleeping beside her. Chapter 2. When Love Turns into Adjustment. At first, Sarah adjusted in small ways. When Daniel canceled dinner plans, she said, "It's okay." When he forgot important dates, she reminded herself he was busy. When her feelings were ignored, she swallowed them and smiled. Each adjustment felt harmless. Each one felt like love. She told herself, marriage is about compromise, but compromise slowly turned into sacrifice. Sarah stopped sharing her expectations. She stopped expressing disappointment. She stopped hoping for change, not because she didn't care, but because caring hurt too much. When she tried to explain her feelings, Daniel said, "You think too much." When she asked for time together, he replied, "Why do you create problems when everything is fine?" Those words stayed with her. So she adjusted again. She planned her life around his comfort. She reduced her needs. She made herself smaller. Daniel felt relaxed. There were fewer questions, fewer emotional talks. To him, the marriage felt easier. He didn't notice that Sarah was changing. Her laughter became softer. Her eyes became tired. She still cooked. still cleaned, still showed up, but something important was fading. Inside, Sarah felt like she was slowly disappearing. Not suddenly, not dramatically, piece by piece. She watched herself become quiet in rooms where she once spoke freely. She learned to pause before speaking, then chose silence instead, because silence felt safer than rejection. At night, she asked herself difficult questions. When did I stop mattering? When did love become this lonely? But she never asked Daniel, not anymore. Adjusting became her habit, and habits are dangerous when they erase who you are. Daniel believed everything was stable. No fights meant no problems. He didn't realize that peace built on silence is only calm before collapse. Sarah wasn't building patience anymore. She was building distance. And distance, once complete, does not ask to be closed. It simply becomes permanent. Chapter 3. The Words She Swallowed Every Day. Every morning, Sarah woke up with words inside her. Words she wanted to say, questions she wanted to ask, feelings she wanted to share. But by the time Daniel finished his breakfast and left for work, those words were already swallowed. She had learned the pattern. When she spoke about her worries, he said, "You are overthinking." When she shared her sadness, he replied, "You are too sensitive." When she talked about feeling lonely, he laughed softly and said, "We live in the same house. How can you be lonely?" Each response closed her mouth a little more. Sarah began to doubt herself. Maybe she really was too sensitive. Maybe her feelings were not important. So she stayed quiet. Silence became her shield. If she didn't speak, she couldn't be dismissed. If she didn't ask, she couldn't be disappointed. But silence was also her prison. At family dinners, she smiled politely. At social events, she nodded and agreed. At home, she moved through the house like a guest. Daniel never noticed. He believed Sarah was easy to live with. "She never complains," he told people. "She understands me." But understanding without being understood slowly breaks the heart. Sarah began writing her thoughts in a notebook. Things she couldn't say out loud. Things no one asked about. She wrote about missing emotional closeness. She wrote about wanting to feel chosen. She wrote about feeling invisible. Sometimes she cried quietly in the bathroom so no one would hear her. She stopped expecting comfort from Daniel. She stopped believing her voice mattered. The silence grew heavier every day. Daniel mistook this silence for maturity. He thought Sarah was strong, independent, emotionally stable. He didn't see that her quietness was not strength, it was exhaustion. When someone is heard, they speak freely. When someone is ignored, they learn silence. Sarah had learned it too well, and every word she swallowed pushed her one step farther away from the marriage she once hoped to save. Chapter 4. His calm became his blindness. Daniel liked the calm life he had. His home was quiet. There were no emotional discussions, no difficult conversations. He believed this was success. In his mind, love had settled. The relationship was stable. There was nothing to fix. He didn't notice that comfort had made him blind. Daniel stopped checking in emotionally. He stopped asking how Sarah felt. He stopped listening because he believed there was nothing to hear. Sarah handled everything smoothly. The house ran well. Life looked organized. So Daniel focused on himself, his work, his stress, his needs. Neglect did not come from cruelty. It came from assumption. He assumed love did not need attention anymore. He assumed silence meant satisfaction. Sometimes Sarah tried again, just a little. She asked if they could spend time together. He said, later. Later never came. She mentioned feeling distant. He replied, "You worry too much." Each time, Daniel unknowingly taught her the same lesson. Her feelings were inconvenient. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't insult her, and that made the damage harder to see, because neglect without anger feels harmless. Daniel believed love stayed alive on its own. He didn't understand that love needs care, just like anything living. While he rested comfortably, Sarah was slowly disconnecting. She stopped waiting for emotional support. She stopped expecting understanding. Daniel felt proud of their peaceful marriage, but peace without effort is often built on someone else's silence. He didn't see the distance growing. He didn't hear the quiet warnings, because blindness feels safe until it's too late to open your eyes. And by the time Daniel would finally notice, the silence would no longer be waiting to be broken. Chapter 5. The loneliest place is a shared home. People often think loneliness comes from being alone. Sarah learned something different. The loneliest place in the world can be a home you share with someone who no longer sees you. Daniel and Sarah lived under the same roof, but their lives moved in separate directions. Their conversations became short and practical. "What's for dinner? Did you pay the bill? What time are you leaving?" There was no warmth in their words, no curiosity, no care. They slept in the same bed, but there was a quiet space between them that never closed. Sarah missed being asked how her day was. She missed laughter. She missed feeling emotionally safe. She began to grieve the marriage, not after it ended, but while she was still inside it. This grief was invisible. There were no tears in front of others, no complaints, just a silent sadness she carried every day. She watched Daniel move through the house, unaware that she was slowly letting go. Sometimes she sat alone in the living room, remembering how they used to talk for hours. She wondered when they stopped being partners and started being strangers. Daniel believed everything was normal. He thought routine meant stability. He thought silence meant comfort. He didn't notice Sarah's emotional distance. He didn't feel the coldness growing. Because loneliness does not announce itself. It settles quietly. Sarah stopped waiting for him to notice. She stopped hoping he would change. Her heart felt tired. Not angry, not broken, just tired. And tired hearts don't fight, they withdraw. The house still looked full, but emotionally it was empty. Sarah was present in body, but absent in spirit. And Daniel never asked why. Chapter 6. The day she stopped asking. One day, Sarah stopped asking. She didn't ask for time. She didn't ask for attention. She didn't ask for understanding. It didn't happen suddenly. It happened quietly. She simply realized that asking no longer made sense. When Daniel came home late, she didn't question him. When weekends passed without plans, she stayed silent. When emotional distance grew, she accepted it. Daniel felt relieved. To him, the problems were finally gone. No emotional talks, no complaints. He believed the marriage had improved. But this was the most dangerous moment, because when someone stops asking, they have stopped expecting. And when expectations disappear, so does hope. Sarah used her energy differently now. She focused on herself, her work, her inner strength. She started rebuilding quietly, not the marriage, but herself. She read more. She walked alone. She found peace in her own company. Daniel didn't notice the change. He enjoyed the quiet. He didn't realize this silence was not patience anymore. It was acceptance. The marriage crossed an invisible line that day, a line you cannot step back over, because love survives on effort. But once effort stops, love does not wait. Sarah was no longer trying to be understood. She was preparing to leave, emotionally, long before physically. Daniel mistook calm for safety. He didn't understand that silence is not the absence of problems. It is the sound of someone giving up. And by the time he would finally hear it, the silence would already be finished speaking. Chapter 7. Silence is not forgiveness. Daniel believed the quiet meant everything was forgiven. He thought time had healed whatever small problems once existed. But silence is not forgiveness. It is clarity. Sarah did not heal by being quiet. She accepted the truth instead. She stopped reacting. She stopped feeling surprised. She stopped feeling hurt because she stopped expecting care. This was not peace. It was emotional distance. Sarah learned how to stand on her own. She built strength in silence. She found calm without explanation. Daniel noticed she had changed. She was calmer, more focused. He thought this was growth, but growth without connection is separation. Sarah no longer needed validation. She no longer waited for apologies. She had already forgiven herself for staying silent too long. When someone stops reacting, they are not calm. They are prepared. Prepared for clarity. Prepared for honesty. Prepared for an ending. Daniel remained comfortable. He didn't ask questions. He didn't realize forgiveness still needs communication, and silence does not repair relationships. Sarah felt lighter now, not because the marriage improved, but because she had accepted it was over. She no longer imagined a future together. She imagined a future at peace, and peace no longer included Daniel. Chapter 8. The sentence he never expected. It was an ordinary day. No argument, no anger, no tears. Daniel sat at the table, checking his phone. Sarah stood near the window. Her voice was calm. "Daniel," she said softly, "I am done." He looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" She didn't raise her voice. She didn't explain in detail. "I stayed quiet for years," she continued. "Now I have nothing left to say." The sentence landed quietly, but its weight was heavy. Daniel laughed nervously. "You're overreacting." Sarah shook her head. "I stopped overreacting a long time ago." He finally felt something shift. Fear. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" he asked. She looked at him calmly. "I did," she replied. "You just didn't hear me." For the first time, Daniel understood. Her silence was not patience. It was a warning, and he ignored it. There were no tears in Sarah's eyes. That scared him the most, because when emotion disappears, so does hope. The marriage didn't end loudly. It ended clearly, and clarity leaves no room for negotiation. Chapter 9. Regret always arrives late. After Sarah spoke that sentence, the house felt different. Not empty, not broken, just final. Daniel sat alone that night, replaying memories he once ignored, moments that felt small before, but now felt heavy. He remembered the times she tried to talk, and he looked at his phone. The times she asked for time, and he said later. Later never came. Now regret arrived, exactly when it was no longer useful. Daniel wanted to talk. He wanted to explain. He wanted to promise change. But Sarah no longer needed explanations. For years, she waited for him to listen. Now she didn't need to speak. Daniel realized something painful. She didn't leave suddenly. She left slowly, right in front of him. He noticed how calm she was. No anger, no blame. That calm scared him more than shouting ever could, because anger still hopes. Calm means acceptance. He tried to remember the last time she laughed freely with him, the last deep conversation, the last honest moment. He couldn't. Daniel finally wanted to understand her feelings, but understanding always arrives too late when it is forced by loss. Sarah packed quietly. No drama, no accusations. Her silence now was not pain, it was closure. Daniel felt the weight of emotional neglect, neglect he never meant to give, but gave anyway. Love doesn't disappear in one moment, it fades when it is not protected. Daniel learned the truth too late. You don't lose people when they leave, you lose them when you stop listening. And regret always waits until there is nothing left to fix. Chapter 10. When Silence Teaches Its Final Lesson. The marriage did not end with shouting. It did not end with betrayal. It ended quietly, with understanding that came too late. Sarah walked away with dignity, not because she was weak, but because she had been strong for too long. Her silence taught a lesson words never could, that love does not die from arguments, it dies from being unheard. Daniel finally understood what silence truly meant. It was not peace, it was distance, it was a countdown. When Sarah left, the house became truly silent. Not the comfortable silence he once enjoyed, but the heavy silence of loss. He wished she had shouted. He wished she had demanded more. But silence does not beg. It prepares. Sarah didn't give up on the marriage suddenly. She gave up after years of being invisible. Her final lesson was clear. When someone stops explaining their pain, they are no longer asking for change. They are choosing themselves. And that choice is final. Reminder, this story is not about a woman who gave up. It is about a woman who spoke for years and was ignored. Silence is not patience. Silence is not forgiveness. Silence is the sound of someone slowly leaving. If you are in a relationship, listen before the silence begins. If you feel unheard, remember this: your voice matters, but timing matters more. And if someone stops explaining their pain to you, do not celebrate the quiet. Fear it, because one day silence will speak, and when it does, it will not be asking anymore. If this story made you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more powerful stories that reveal the truths we ignore before they cost us everything.